Hi, I'm Pam, and I would like to welcome you to the Live Authentically show. My team and I help other people step into their authentic realities via a number of different modalities. This show is obviously one of them. Also, we have a Facebook group, and we can be found at liveauthentically.today/FB. We would love to have you join this group of like-minded, spiritually minded people who are committed to growth and transformation. And I'm super excited that I have just recently launched my first book. It is called SOAR, SOAR, and can be found on Amazon. It is an experiential journey, a spiritual journey through my growth and transformation. And I talk about it in a very raw and real and authentic way. I meet you where you are, and I show you how I ushered myself with the assistance of the universe through my divorce process, and talk about where it brought me to today. So would love to have you check that out. And I am super honored to have with me on my show today, Susan Guthrie. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Pam. How are you?
Doing well, thanks. How about you?
Very good. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Delighted that you've joined me. Thank you. And Susan is a family law attorney and mediator, and she is going to be talking today about what she does in her practice. And she also has a podcast, so we'll be talking about that as well. So before we jump into you and what you do on a daily basis, I would love to start off with the same question that I start off every show. And that is, what does it mean to you to live authentically every day?
Well, that's a great question. For me, it is so much of my life has been centered around living and trying to live up to other people's expectations of what my life should be or what I should be doing or what my life should look like. And I think one of the gifts of getting a little older has been that, not that I don't care about what other people think or, living up to expectations, I suppose, but what's become much more important to me is living up to my own expectations and living up to my own level of self-care, and that includes care for others. So it's really trying to turn more inward and being less focused on what's outward.
That is a great answer. And I'm wondering, was there a pivotal moment or an aha moment or an epiphany where you said, you know what, I need to refocus and recenter and look inward and start and making sure I live up to my expectations? Or was that a gradual process over time?
I think the pivot started for me when I realized that my divorce litigation practice, I was a divorce litigator solely before I turned to mediation for about 20 years. And when I realized that I was completely burned out from that approach to my profession, dealing with that high emotional content for people in that adversarial fashion, because that's what was expected of me in my profession, that I started to see the light of not living for and conducting my profession, conducting my life, conducting my career in a way that others expected, that I could forge a new path and find new ways. And so it really started there, I think, for me. And then, to your question, since then, it's been a gradual process. I've gone through quite a bit of change in the past 3-4 years. And that has really, change is hard, but change really helps you get some perspective.
Right.
So, yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit how you felt pre and post kind of that point where you said, you know what, I really need to step more into my authenticity and start doing things for me? How did you feel in your, in that life when you were in that adversarial role, digging your heels in, defending your clients, et cetera? If you can describe to me how you felt mentally, emotionally, physically in that scenario as compared to how you feel now.
That's an easy answer, because I felt in all ways exhausted. I felt exhausted emotionally. I felt exhausted mentally. I felt exhausted physically. I literally was just depleted. And I was honestly at a point where I was going to stop practicing law entirely, because part of it is, I care so much. I cared so much for my clients' lives. I felt the burden of their struggle was on my shoulders, and I had to be their warrior, because that's, the adversarial system is built upon winning and losing.
Mhm.
And, early in my career, I think many of us have a competitive nature. Certainly, you're going to find that many litigators have a competitive nature. And there was a part of that that maybe was fed by the competition or fed by the adversity, but that quickly will burn you out. And it truly was exhaustion. I was just unhappy all the way around because I was always tired. And you also get something along the lines of compassion fatigue, where I became less empathic or empathetic to what my clients were going through, because everybody I dealt with was going through it. And so I stopped being able to have the same level of care for them. And it wasn't that I didn't want to, it was almost, I think, my self-protection kicking in. And when I was able, for me, the switch happened when I switched over to a mediation practice. I was able to get my energy back, get my empathy back, get my balance back, where, because I felt that I was helping clients in a better way, I was also able to then find balance in my own life, because the struggles to help people were not so draining on me. I was able to help them in a much more positive way. So, it just brought my energy back, brought my focus back, brought my desire to help others again back to me. And since then, I've been able to, move that into other areas with coaching and with consulting with clients. And now I work with other professionals as well, helping them advance their practice in a different way. So it's really kind of opened my world up.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And it is just so powerful when we get to that place where we feel like we are whole and imbalanced across all spectrums. That's when we start to harness our personal power. I mean, that's when we directly draw from an unlimited source of energy and just feel so full. And when you're doing something that you're truly passionate about, I know what I've found is that there's this continuous circle of energy. It just, the more you pour into it, the more it gives you back. And it's just the circle of energy. And you just never get drained anymore, right? You just feel so full and you just want to keep coming back for more because it's just such a source of fulfillment.
Yeah, it's actually energizing.
Right.
It feeds you in a very different way than the alternate, path for me was very draining.
Mhm.
So it's been a great changeover for me.
That's great. I'm so happy for you. What are were there, when you made that shift into this new practice area, were there other lifestyle modalities that you employed on a daily basis in terms of caring for yourself, either physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, that you hadn't done in your prior life or prior practice?
I think I made a lot of shifts around that time because I really wasn't feeling well, and I was exhausted all the time. So, a few changes that I started to make the link between physical movement, exercise, that sort of thing, and my stress levels. Prior to that, I'd been very focused on exercise as something to make me look better. I
Mhm.
was worried about fitting into that dress, or, how I looked. And since that time, I would say my day it starts with some sort of physical act. I get up and spin, or I get up and do yoga, or I get up and do something. But it's no longer for the purpose of looking good. It's for the purpose of feeling good. So that was one of those things that really tied together for me. I also, as one lifestyle change that I made at that time is I gave up drinking alcohol, because I had found at that time in my life, with the stress and with the depletion, I found that it was becoming something of a crutch, or something that was a way to, I thought, combat the stress or relax. And decided to cut it out. My family has a history of alcohol issues,
Okay.
and I just decided to cut it out. And that was another thing that I think has just led to a healthier overall lifestyle for me. And haven't looked back on that one. It's been 10 years and don't miss it. So those two things really made a big difference for me.
And that is so true. When we learn to anchor on how we feel, we start to make different choices automatically, organically. It's just when we, like you said, when we're motivated by external factors, such as what other people think or what the tag on the dress says, the size, etc., we aren't as motivated to make the right choices. But when we start anchoring on how we feel, that is just a complete game changer.
It really is. And that relation between the physical movement, the feeling of, I especially like to spin. I'm a Soul Cycle, addict. But there's something about that. For me, it's just a better day when I can start with that endorphin rush. And it really has nothing to do with the calorie burn. It has to do with, the music and feeling good and being physical and moving, that it's a better day.
That's
Gets
great.
me out of bed.
Yep. I know. I look forward to it as well. I miss it. I mean, during this current pandemic and the lockdown and everything, that's one of the huge adjustments I've had to make, is learning how to exercise at home, because I love my routine that I have at the gym and all the machines I have available. So it is a big release for me. It's a piece of my day that I look forward to very much and do rely on for feeling great. But like with anything else in the face of change, we adapt, right? We find other ways to meet the needs that we have. So.
Yeah, it's definitely a time of change right now and adaptation.
For sure. What I'd like to talk about next is what you do on a daily basis. If you can just tell me, I know every day is different, but in general, can you tell me a little bit about mediation? Maybe we can start there.
Sure. So my entire practice is online. So much like you and I are talking right now on Zoom, on video conferencing, my online practice is mediation, coaching. I film my podcast and tape it on Zoom. And I also have another business where I train other mediators and professionals in how to do their mediations online, which has become very popular under the current, social distancing situation. So I've been doing a lot of that. So each day is a series of meetings usually that are held in an online platform, and it can be varied. I can have a coaching. I do a lot of coaching with clients who have been in high conflict relationships. When I did litigate, I did a lot of high conflict divorce work. So I work with a lot of clients there. And then mediations. And then now I'm doing trainings and webinars on online mediation. So each day is just a succession of Zoom meetings for me right now.
Okay, I see. And with regard to the coaching, so do you coach people who are currently going through a divorce? Is that right? Are you like more of their like emotional coach, or what do you mean exactly?
It's more that it depends on where they are in the process and what their process is. So I can really help along a spectrum. Having been a divorce attorney and mediator for 30 years, I've worked with people who are going through all different kinds of situations in divorce. My two areas of specialty were high conflict divorce, dealing with narcissists, borderline personality disorder people, that true high conflict divorces, and then also high net worth divorces. I lived in an area of the country at the time that I was litigating that was a fairly high net worth area. So I was dealing with multi-million-dollar divorces on a regular basis. So I can be brought in by clients who are going through the process. I'm often working with clients who are beyond the divorce, but still trying to function in a co-parenting relationship with their former high conflict spouse, not former high conflict, but former spouse who's still high conflict. So it's a lot of different ways that I work with people. And sometimes it has nothing to do with high conflict. Sometimes it's helping people in a high net worth situation navigate the divorce process or the post-dissolution process.
Okay. And across, the entire spectrum of different clients that you've worked with, I know every situation is different, but do you see recurring issues where people typically get kind of hung up? Are there some common areas where, you see common areas that come up in various situations that you need to coach them through? I mean, I know every situation is different, but I'm just curious what some of the major barriers might be for people to get past.
There's one commonality, I think, that is, at least for people who decide they need some help or coaching or assistance, is that they are very focused on the past.
Mm-hmm.
They are still reliving the past every day. It's almost like they wake up every day and it's Groundhog Day, because they are so focused on what happened, why life didn't turn out the way they wanted it to, why the relationship failed, why it was someone else's fault, why they were a victim, whatever that might be, that they get caught in that little, I call it a hamster wheel of living in the past, which puts them in a limbo. So even if the divorce is over, I repeatedly see people who are still living in it, still living in that emotional space. And so a lot of, what I do with people is try to help them focus on the future. And especially for my clients who are going through the divorce process, you can go through the divorce process focused on what went wrong in the past. And then you're going to get to the end of your divorce and have a divorce settlement that has nothing to do with what your future will look like. It's just been focused on, I'm upset, I'm angry, I'm hurt, I'm looking for retribution, whatever that might be, which, by the way, you're never going to get compensated for that in a divorce. It just doesn't, the process doesn't work that way. Or if you are able to focus forward, you can craft a settlement that will actually help you move into that new created future. So I work very much with clients trying to help them move beyond what that was, what that past was, into what do you want that future to look like? Maybe you went through some similar, I know you went through an entire process with your divorce and, ended up in what I think you would say, I'm reading your book right now. So I was, in a fabulous new future. And, but it takes effort and it takes some thought and focus on a future, not on that past.
Absolutely. And I do have to say, I recognize that it's incredibly difficult to let go of the past. I know that even prior to my divorce, I found myself getting stuck, kind of spinning my wheels in certain situations that I just couldn't let go. And what I didn't realize at the time was that it was only holding me back, right? It wasn't hurting the other person. The other person had moved on already, but it was holding me back and disallowing me from enjoying the present moment, and certainly preventing me from stepping into future scenarios. So that is, I think, one of the big shifts that I have learned personally, is how to just leave the past in the past, because every day is a new day, and it's just so it's just so incredibly empowering. But it takes work. I mean, it takes a lot of soul work, spiritual work, whatever you want to call it. You do have to learn to reframe it and learn forgiveness. And I'm sure that that's something you talk about regularly with the people that you coach, and that was something that I had to work through as well. Is, forgiving doesn't necessarily mean, condoning what the other person did. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that it frees you up to move forward. It frees you up. And it's like when you finally get to that place where you let the past go, my analogy that I use is, I feel like I was pulling around a wagon full of bricks, and somebody had just come and unloaded all the bricks from my wagon. And I think a lot of times we don't realize how much emotional weight we're carrying around with us until it's lifted.
Yeah, I think it's like anything in our emotional baggage that we carry around. We don't realize how heavy it is. We don't realize what we were living under. We don't realize that what we thought was reality maybe really wasn't, but it was our created vision of what we thought our past was. Right. And until we do move beyond it, it can be very hard. But sometimes we need a little bit of a mirror held up, or I don't get to talk to people all the time and say, I can say, I'm sorry for what you went through, but you at this point are the person who's hurting yourself, not, right. Not the person who you think hurt you. Right now, it's you and your repetitive cycle of reliving it, right, that are keeping you there. Right. So there's a little tough talk sometimes that goes on. Tough talk's not the right way to phrase it, but I very much want to help people, and I talk to them. I do want to say what I'm talking to them about. I'm not a therapist. I'm an attorney. And so what I'm talking to them about is, let's talk about what you want in your future so that we can look at your financial situation, family situation, as it's being reconstructed during the divorce process, and structure your settlement in a way that's going to help you create that future. So if it's that you want to go back to school, or you want to, start a new career, or, do we need to set up your financial support system in a way where you're front loaded so you can take more time off to go to school, or set up your parenting plan so that you have available time to study, that sort of thing. And if you're not putting thought into what you want to see in that future, you're going to end up with that settlement that then when you get to the future, it doesn't work into the life that you're wanting to move forward into. So it can be very helpful. And once we get that focus that forward instead of on the past, everything moves much more easily. It flows for people a lot better. Staying stuck in the past, unfortunately, just is a repetitive cycle. It's over and over.
Right. And I will echo what you said earlier. I can't remember the exact word you used, but you alluded to it taking creativity and open-mindedness and a willingness to focus on the future. And that's a huge step. That is a huge step. I know that's throughout my entire process. I did stay firmly affixed on the future, firmly focused on the future and the life I wanted to create. And yes, I had, there was kind of some, reflecting on the past from time to time. You can't not, right? When you're going through a divorce, there's emotions swirling and you're revisiting just a number of things come up, some of which you wouldn't anticipate, just memories and everything. And, it's very, it definitely can be very emotionally challenging, but that's the key, I think, and I found for me personally with navigating change, is staying focused on what you're stepping into rather than what you've come out of. And that's part of why, and thank you for consciously choosing to spend some of your time reading my book. I so appreciate it. And that's why I'm opening up the way that I am, because I want to help other people. I firmly believe that everybody can do or can replicate in their own life what I did in mine, is coming from what I would consider felt like, it was. It felt like rock bottom. There were days, when this process first started, I don't know how far you've gotten into the book, but it was literally rock bottom for me. And from there, I just kind of put one foot in front of the other, and in a very open, honest, real, and authentic way, show people how I partnered and had an open mind and partnered with the universe to create my reality. And I firmly believe anybody can do this, but it does take a willingness to be open-minded and to be creative, and to really stay focused on pouring your energy into the future.
Yeah. And it's a sort of a constant tapping yourself on the shoulder and saying, oh, you're doing it again. You're moving backward, not forward. Right. So no, I'm about a third of the way into the book. And so we're starting to see you making a pivot and a change. And
okay.
But it's that, and I'm enjoying your journey because you are being very open and honest. And it is a journey that I have seen some clients go through. I would call it a success story. Many of my clients, especially when I was litigating, unfortunately, there's nothing about the litigation process that really, it's so focused on taking the facts of what happened and making them suit your client's case to get them as much of what they want as you can. That's litigation. So it is very past focused. We are looking at, what bad behavior can we find from what your spouse did that we can use as leverage in order to get you what you want in your divorce. It's a very different process from being future focused. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that I found so draining. If any of your listeners saw the movie Marriage Story, and there's that scene about the car seat, and then they take that, rather innocuous happening that might happen in any parent's life where they get frustrated, and then they're in the courtroom and that incident gets turned into almost an accusation of parental abuse. And, that's the litigation process. That was actually a very realistic moment in that movie. There are a lot of scenes that don't live up to what the experience is, or that we're just a poor reflection of reality. But that was very real, and that's all very, past focused and harm focused and negatively focused. So for me, the people that are able to move forward successfully are the ones who are able to the past has its place. And as you said, you can forgive. That doesn't mean that it didn't happen, or that you will forget, or it might not have marked you or changed you in some very real way, but you still have your ability to move into your future.
Right.
And that's a key component, because that forgiveness you were talking about, it's the gift. I know it's a trite saying, but it really is the gift you give yourself, not the other person.
Right.
It really has very little to do with the other person. It has everything to do with you.
Right. Right. It definitely does. And that's what I experienced. It was just so incredibly freeing to get to that place.
Yeah, I did. I've been divorced myself, and went through that process and found it was very easy to point out the flaws in my ex-husband and why it was his fault. And the two things that helped me move beyond that were, one, forgiving him for being the human being that he is. I also had to own up to my own side of things. And that was a little bit of an eye-opener as well. And I would say I'm a very different person than the person that was married to that person. Because when you have to turn the mirror on yourself and own your own part of what happened, that's when you can start making the changes that, again, will help you to move into a new future. So it's not just letting go of what the other person did. You also have to, acknowledge that there may be some elements of your own participation that could be better or might be different for the future.
Absolutely. And that was part of my process as well, as I did a lot of, took a lot of self-inventory and took the opportunity to do some deep soul work. And, I firmly believe, every human relationship, whether it's a marriage, a friendship, a mother-child, or parent-child relationship, whatever, there are opportunities to learn about ourselves. Every single human relationship, every single human interaction. And when we do have that open-mindedness and willingness to commit to growth and transformation and ask ourselves, how did I contribute to this? What can I learn from this? What is this trying to teach me? How can this event, this relationship shape me into a better person? Then, a whole new world opens up to us. Then we're on the path of growth and transformation. We get out of that victim mindset of poor me, why did this happen to me? Woe is me, into what can I learn from this? And then that's a well that never runs dry. And that was just a big piece of it for me, just going through that process and realizing, no events happen in a vacuum, right? All of the prior events kind of play a role in, and we can't possibly understand why certain people behave in certain ways. And we just have to own our part of it. And really it's about becoming the best version of ourselves. Then, each of us gets to take the more improved version of ourselves into future relationships. And that was a little bit of a bitter pill for me to swallow, only because, I would look back, and I know my former husband, I see growth in him, and we haven't talked about it, directly, but I can see how he parents differently, how he communicates differently. And I've grown as a result of this. And every once in a while, in the spirit of being totally authentic and honest, I'll say, oh, it would have been so nice if he could have only been like that while we were married. And I'm sure he can say the same about me. If only she could have been a little more chill and not been the Virgo and worried about all the different I's being dotted and the T's being crossed and all that stuff, that maybe we wouldn't be in this place. But we can't go back. And again, that's what human relationships are meant to do, is mold us and cultivate us and shape us into better versions of ourselves. And that being said, I take the position that every relationship, even the ones that end in divorce, mean something. They're meant for our spiritual growth and evolution. And that was a big game changer for me, is learning to reframe divorce as move out of that space of viewing it as society sort of conditions us to think about it in terms of it being an end or a failure or a defeat, into an opportunity. And a big piece of what I'm doing now is trying to destigmatize this whole idea of divorce. I still, even though we were married for 20 years and ended in divorce, I still very much view it as a smashing success, and always will. We came together for a purpose. Our purpose was to bring these 4 children into the world. our relationship ran its course. And from there, we stepped into our authentic reality. So I very much view it as a success, and I'm dedicating a lot of time and energy to destigmatizing it. So that said, I would love to hear your views on divorce. I mean, has your view evolved over the years? I mean, did you once at one point in your life have that societal view of divorce, of it being, you know, contentious or, you know, full of separatism or a failure or a defeat? And how has that view of divorce evolved over time?
Yeah, I would say that's a great question because it's definitely evolved, and my evolution has been, you know, now I've done this for 30 years. I've been through hundreds of divorces, I would say, because I've represented a client on either side or helped a couple mediate. And you know, when I first got out of law school 30 years ago, divorce was essentially a business transaction. That's how the law really does view it. Even when it comes down to the parenting plan, there was sort of a set, you know, this is how it's going to be. And, you know, divorce just means that you two have to get over it, to decide how you're going to divide stuff up, and whoever can, you know, play the game better, maneuver the facts better, that person will come out and win. And so it was a very adversarial, but it definitely had that overtone of, I don't know if it was from the attorney perspective failure, but it was definitely a, you know, what is the problem here? It didn't work out, get over it, move on. It is a very factual thing. And I think that's an attorney mindset, right? We deal with facts. Then I went through the divorce process myself and very much felt that whole societal stigmatization is not coming out of my mouth well today this morning, but you know, that feeling that I still think is very prevalent in our society, that it's a failure when the relationship comes to what in many cases is a natural end. There's some sort of belief, and I think it may even come from that whole till death do us part concept, that then makes it wrong when a relationship is no longer serving both people for it to end. And there's a mindset that has to be somebody's fault. And, you know, so we spend a great deal of time not being the one at fault, finding the reason why the other person's the person at fault. And I think there's also an unfortunate cycle that comes about when relationships end, because the honesty about that is so difficult, and because it's so hard to accept, that people don't do it. They don't end the relationship. They just sort of float on in a relationship. You know, as a divorce attorney, I can't count how many times I have heard from clients that the relationship ended years ago. We've just been together, married still, but living like roommates or just co-parenting in the same household, but it wasn't a relationship or a partnership anymore. And unfortunately, that dynamic usually will lead to someone eventually finding an emotionally satisfying or physically satisfying, or both, relationship outside of the marital relationship, right? That's when adultery comes in. And there are a lot of reasons why people stray outside their marriages. But when you are living in a relationship that is not meeting your needs across the board, which is what I hear from clients all the time, it's not a surprise that sooner or later one or both of the parties do stray. And that's the worst possible scenario then for ending, because then you have betrayal and breach of trust, and you have actual wrongs and harms that go on. And I think that all stems from additionally what you were just talking about, that societal negativity around what might be just the natural end of a relationship. And the ability, you know, if we could have that ability to honestly accept the end of a relationship and honor that relationship for what it was and what it served. You know, you mentioned, you know, bringing your 4 beautiful children into the world and raising them to be, you know, happy, healthy human beings. You know, that's a wonderful purpose for a relationship. And for the 20 years you did have together. But we don't generally look at it that way in our society. So it's a very difficult, my colleague and close friend, Gabrielle Hartley, who wrote Better Apart, is her book, The Radically Positive Way to Separate.
Mm-hmm.
And she is sort of the leader of this positive divorce movement. And, we both spend a great deal of time trying to talk to people about divorce being an opportunity to move forward in a better way and to both be happy, in your relationships. And unfortunately, that is a hard road to hoe in a lot of ways. People are very focused on the negative around this particular societal construct.
Right. Right. And that was, I had a lot of work to do personally to make that shift, but I will speak to, I think that there is a lot of negativity surrounding, the ending of a marriage, because like you said, we're focused on till death do us part. And actually, my daughter actually challenged us on that. She's like, what's the deal here? You guys said till death do us part in front of all your friends and family. And here you are, you guys got divorced. And totally valid question. And I had to do a lot of work in that area. But for me, the big shift happened when I started to view all of this through the soul, right? Through the soul perspective. And I know everyone has different belief systems, and my objective isn't to evangelize or to sway people one way or the other, but I was so focused on that man-made contract. We agreed to be with each other till death do us part without having the foresight. I had to grant myself, grace and compassion. And I had to realize that I was making the best decision I could at that time when I was 23 with the knowledge that I had at that time. And what I didn't understand at the time, it took me years to get to this in my belief system, but behind the scenes are soul contracts. There's something that, something much more powerful that's coming from a much higher power, a grander place that, we have certain agendas. Our souls come here with certain agendas, and life gets complicated because we try to impose these man-made contracts. But, Mark and I, we came together to bring these 4 kids into the world. And again, every relationship has a purpose. And I know ours has run its course, and we did. Don't think I didn't wrestle with for years thinking about the idea of staying in it for the kids, right? Staying in it. Our relationship has run its course, like you mentioned, and the well was dry in terms of what we could give each other. And obviously there was some fear involved with taking the leap, but I finally got to a place where I realized that I wasn't comfortable with what we were modeling for our kids. While there wasn't alcoholism or abuse or any of those things we might think of in a really unhappy marriage, there was extreme disconnection. And I thought, this is our shot to give them a mental image of what marriage is. And we're not doing them any favors by giving them this mental image. And then I quickly shifted into, we both deserve to be happy. And if we're happy, that's the best gift we can give our kids. And whether or not we're married to each other, that's really secondary. And now even our kids recognize, they do say to us, they said to me shortly after I moved into a different home, Mom, you're so much happier now. They pick that up energetically, even though we're kind of going through the motions and doing things as a family and, posing for family pictures and color coordinated outfits, whatever. Kids pick up on the energy behind it, and they weren't witnessing, love and connection and all of that we wanted to impart on our kids. So, we had to, we got to a point where we just, this was the outcome that worked for us. We thought made the most sense for us. And because of that, I'm in a better place to parent. And I feel like he has stepped into, a better place to parent as well. So I believe that we are giving our kids a gift because that we couldn't have given them if we stayed married.
Yeah, that is such a powerful message, what you just said. I'm so glad that you share that, because I talk to people about that all of the time. And what you said, it wasn't an abusive situation. There wasn't alcoholism. It wasn't like your kids were living with 2 parents who were at each other's throats, but that indifferent place that people can get to where the emotional connection as partners and spouses is not there. Is that really what you want to model for your children? Do you want that relationship for them when they find a mate, when they find a spouse, when they find a partner. And, I'm a stepmother of three 22-year-olds. I have step triplets. And one of the things that I always have hoped is that they can see the relationship that their dad and I have. I'm his second wife, and their stepmom, but, we have a very having grown from my first marriage and learned a lot. And he would say, my husband would say the same. I think we hopefully model a positive, connected partnership relationship for them. And they wouldn't have that model if everyone had stayed in our prior relationships. And, I think it's a very, very powerful message to our children. What we do every day, how we face everything, how we handle the divorce. So many parents, one of the things I mentioned to them is this focus on the past, and that you're in. Is that where you want your children living? Do you want them living in this land of the loss you are projecting, or do you want them living into a future that can be better for all of you? And that's actually very powerful when you bring people's children to the forefront of the conversation. Many of us are then able to get out of ourselves, out of our whatever quagmire of emotion, and focus on what is best for our children or for your children, and look forward. So it's a very powerful message.
Yeah, I agree. And, my kids, again, we didn't sit down with them and say, we're going to commit to navigating this, harmoniously. They pick it up. And again, I would like to stress that point is kids are just incredibly intuitive, and they do pick up on the energy. So, and I feel like we get along better now that we are, not together. We get along, in terms of communication, decision-making, all across the board. So they've been able to witness that. They've been able to witness two adults working through the situation, problem-solving, decision-making. And again, the point I try to drive home in my book is that anyone can do this with the right mindset. So yeah, I want to drive that message home. And speaking of messaging, I know you have a very powerful message that you like to disseminate and share through your podcast. So I would love to hear about your podcast and what your objective is, what your main purpose is for doing your podcast, and anything else you'd like to share about it.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, so it sort of building on everything that we've been talking about, my podcast is called Divorce and Beyond. And I very consciously chose that title because, yes, I'm a divorce attorney of 30 years. I know a great deal about divorce, and I do want to share that knowledge with my listeners. I bring on experts who can talk about the financial aspects of divorce, the emotional aspects of divorce. I do want there to be information to help people move through the process, because there's a tendency, I think, when people are in divorce to get lost in it, to feel like it has taken over their lives, it's overwhelming, and it's all they can see. And really, divorce is just a finite period of time in your life. And the biggest gift you can actually give to yourself is to get out of it as quickly as possible. Divorce, I call it divorce limbo, because your life goes into sort of a holding pattern. It's a very difficult place to live, and dragging your divorce out with acrimony and litigation and, fighting, etc., is only going to make your life more miserable. So I really wanted to have a show that could also be focused on the beyond, life beyond divorce, because having been through it myself and going through it with, hundreds of people over my career, I don't know anyone who has ever come back to me, and I would say it for myself, who wouldn't say their life is so much better beyond the divorce, that the future has been a better place as they've finally moved into it. And so I also want to bring people experts and resources and information about that moving forward, like SOAR, right? Moving beyond the circumstance of what may even, many people feel divorce happens to them. They didn't choose it, but you still have your choice as you move forward. And that's, so I'm very much focused on the positive aspects, as you mentioned earlier. So it's really, it's been a wonderful experience. You probably are experiencing the same thing. Having a show gives me an opportunity to talk to a lot of really smart people who have had really amazing experiences and who are willing to share them to help others. And that is a powerful thing in and of itself.
Right. Absolutely. It is just so powerful to connect with other like-minded people who look at their lives through the lens of growing and wanting to be a better person, investing in their future, etc. So super powerful message. So looking forward
Yeah.
to checking out some of your episodes.
No, thank you.
So we are just getting ready to wrap up here. I've so enjoyed our conversation today. I feel like we could talk for hours, but I know you have a full day ahead of you, and I do as well. So before we close, are there any words of wisdom or anything that you wanted to share with our viewers and listeners before we close up with regard to anything, words of advice for people who are having a hard time going through divorce, just anything? I'll just give you a minute here to share any knowledge and wisdom.
I lately, as we are living through, the quarantine or the self-distancing situation that we're finding ourselves in, or just difficult change. I mentioned earlier in the show, I've had not divorce, not relationship issues, but we've moved 2 times in the past 4 years, major moves across country, and all that turmoil and change has been very difficult. I've had a hard time adjusting as these things have happened, but in so many ways that the changes have brought opportunities to my life that never would have happened. And they have been gifts all along the way. And I'm so grateful for them today. So I know change is uncomfortable. It's hard. It's difficult, but have faith, because change is an opportunity for growth and positive movement forward. And I hope that for all of your listeners who are going through a difficult time or going through hard times of change, whatever that change might be, it is hard for us to accept, but know that there's really wonderful opportunities that come out of the experience. As you said, you've changed and your ex-husband have changed. Change is good. It's just hard, but good will come.
Great. Thank you. Such a powerful note to end on. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And so if people would like to get in touch with you directly, what is the best way for them to do that?
So the best way is through my website, divorceinaBetterWay.com. My email, Susan@divorceinaBetterWay.com, or through the podcast website, which is divorceandbeyondpod.com. They can also reach me through there.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you so much for being on my show today. I so appreciate you taking your time to share all of your knowledge and wisdom with me and my viewers and listeners.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed this conversation very much.
I did as well. And thank you to all of our viewers and listeners. Time is a choice, and I'm so grateful that you have consciously chiseled time out of your day to be with us and listen to Susan's immense knowledge and wisdom. So thank you very much for being here. And again, I would love to invite you to join our Facebook group. We can be found at liveauthentically.today/FB. So I hope you all have a great day.